Well, good afternoon. Hope things are going well with you. Uh, no, I wasn't with you on Tuesday, and unfortunately, I won't be able to be available next Tuesday either. But good to be with you here on a Thursday. Trying to maintain some sort of consistency in terms of these daily videos, hoping that it's still reaching people. People are still interested in receiving these videos, coming and seeing them, and so just always wondering about that, the most effective use of my time in doing things. So that's why I continue to persevere in doing this, and again just hope that it's being effective. So, anyways, I also just wanted to let you know what's kind of going on. It was a good time on Sunday as far as doing our family service. Several families came out. It was good to see them. Some that we haven't seen since the coronavirus situation started. So we will continue to do that. It's maintaining a pattern of every other week right now. That's what we had said. And I think, with October 25th being the next time we would do it, then when we think about what November represents and then December as far as just busyness, I think we'll just maintain that pattern and then kind of see where we go from there as far as whether we switch to something other. And then another thing that, I'm just wondering about that I would love to get people's opinion about, as we think about ministering around Christmas, we're throwing around the idea of doing a drive-through living nativity. Finding some space that would be able to accommodate, cars driving through, different stations, if you will, different scenes that would be created around the Christmas story. And we'd love to hear from you as far as what your input would be, what you would maybe want to be involved in terms of that. But then maybe more so thinking about, is that something that would interest you? Would that be something that would interest other people that you know? Just different things going on. But we are in the midst of working our way through Psalm 112, a psalm that really does speak of God's power and provision for our lives, and then really, how our lives are connected. If you remember, that's kind of what I said in terms of something I see in the back-to-back nature of Psalm 111 and 112. As 111 kind of focuses on the great works that God does, and Psalm 112 kind of talks about the effects that then has on our lives. And so just reading through to where we will find ourselves today, praise the Lord. It starts off from 112. Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who finds great delight in his commands. His children will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures forever. Even in darkness light dawns for the upright, for the gracious and compassionate and righteous man. Good will come to him who is generous and lends freely, who conducts his affairs with justice. Surely he will never be shaken. A righteous man will be remembered forever. That's what we were last Thursday, and what a great assurance in terms of that. Not sure to what extent I really got into a righteous man will be remembered forever. But, I just would encourage you to think about righteous people that you've known, people that were pure and honest, that were looking out more for your benefit than their own, and just how those people affected your life and how you tend to remember them more and have a more favorable impression of them. And because of the impression they made on your life, your tendency to remember them, to the extent that God is saying that he will reinforce that memory as well. Or whether that's just a natural consequence of righteousness. I think both dynamics could be working in there. But going into the verse that we will be looking at today, we might even get 7 and 8 today. But it says, he will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. And that's very very much a similar statement in terms of what we found in verse 6. Surely he will never be shaken, that his heart, he will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. And I suppose the first question that I have for you, or the first consideration, really is that true of you? Do you fear bad news? The cliche that's out there in terms of, well, I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. Or, boy, things are going so well, I wonder when the bottom is going to fall out on this. And when we think about what secures us in our Christian lives, what great benefit comes from our relationship with God. To know that because of the fact that he is sovereign, because of the fact that he is omniscient, because of the fact that he's omnipresent, the fact that he is omnipotent, those are 4 of the character traits of God that really secure us in our lives. When I talk about sovereignty, when I actually have a series that I've done on the character of God, a Bible study even that I've created around that. And the title that I have around sovereignty is Comfort or Control, ? In other words, what does God's sovereignty mean to you? Is it about comfort that comes in your life, or is it about control? Is it about the fact that, okay, God, wants to control your life and you do what he says and that's the only thing that works, and so on and so forth. Now, that is the way that God has structured his economy. We do have to recognize that, God does that not because he's a braggart or he's insecure or he wants his way, or, you take the highway. But he recognizes that his way is the best way. One aspect of the privilege, the prerogative even, that comes from being the creator is he knows how he's created us. He knows how he's made us. And so therefore, when he says that, okay, the best way for you to function in terms of the way I've created you, what he even has envisioned and coordinated in terms of relationship, he created us, individually, but he also creates us in the aspect that we're going to form relationships, makes us male and female. So he knew that marriage would happen. He knew what family would happen. He knew that what society would happen. And so therefore he knows, the good things that are both for us as individuals and then what will be right for our relationships, for families, for societies, for towns, for villages, for nations, for countries, for states. And so therefore, when God is sovereign and gives his plan, even though there is an aspect of that is controlling, that is also intended to be for our comfort, the fact that God is in control of things. And I think that's one reason why it says here, he will have no fear of bad news, because when we think about God's economy, when we think about the way that God orchestrates things, even in terms of, what the New Testament points us to in terms of the joy that we'll have in suffering. The fact that God works all things together for the good, for those who love God and are called to his purpose. When we recognize that even bad things can be used for good purposes, when we think about the character that is built in us, the faith that is built in us when bad things happen. So I don't think that naturally this doesn't mean, that no bad news will come. It just says he will have no fear of bad news. There is an aspect of life that we are finite and the world is finite, that evil does happen and God doesn't always protect us from the effects of evil. So it's not like bad news is going to happen, but we don't have to be afraid of it because, again, God is still in control of it. God is still using it. God still knows it, and so therefore can make a plan through it, around it, over it. And so therefore, if God hasn't protected us from the bad, then God intends for us to go through it, but he's going to be present with us. That's where his omnipresence come in. He's going to be powerful in the midst of that. That's where his omnipotence comes in. And so therefore, what we can know and what we can believe, again, realize it does say here, he will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. It's only by virtue of us trusting in the Lord where, again, with that steadfastness, that no fear of bad news will come, because we know that, God has a will, God has a purpose, even in the things that would be bad. And what I believe, what I communicate to people is really the freedom, the true joy, the true contentment that comes from not needing circumstances or people to be a certain way, for us to be at peace. That's a quote that I've made, that one of the greatest freedoms we have as believers is not needing circumstances or people to be a certain way for us to be at peace. because that's not what we're oriented to. That's not what we're dependent on. That's not where our expectation comes from. How unstable our lives are when that is the case. That, boy, if things don't work out the way that I want them to, I need them to, that will bring most benefit to me, you are just banking on and relying on something that you have no idea what's going to happen in circumstance. You can do your best, and I think a lot of what life is people trying to secure the best future. Okay, I'm going to do things that promote good health. I'm going to do things that promote good finances. I'm going to do things that promote good job, good education. And all of that is doing things in the present to kind of try and secure something in the future. And I don't think, God wouldn't say that's bad. I think that's part of wisdom. That's part of, how we would take responsibility for ourselves and internalize that personal responsibility we have. But we have to understand, even in the presence of doing that, we can't control things. We can't secure things truly. We can't effectively control circumstance. We can't control other people. That's really one of the bigger things. We can't control, creation. We can't control, storms and different dynamics of how the world operates. But both in terms of people and then in terms of environment, in terms of electricity and different things that can happen that are really tragic in nature at times. But we're not banking ourselves on that. And so whatever attempts the world may be making in securing the best future, the reason why we as believers fear no bad news is we're not dependent on that we're dependent on a God who knows. We're dependent on a God who's in control. We're dependent on a God who's powerful. And so we can really live in the true joy, live in the true freedom, live in the true contentment, knowing that, we don't have to be afraid of bad news because, God, there's always good news in the presence of bad news, and that kind of goes back to even in the darkness, light dawns. There's always a confidence of information, of relationship, of security in terms of I'm God's mine. I'm correctly connected to Him, loves me always. He's always promoting good things and light in my life in spite of the darkness. And I think, maybe that's an aspect of, this second part of the verse when it says he'll have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast. So therefore, the absence of fear, again, is what fosters this steadfastness. But that steadfastness is about decision making. It's about, okay, I'm not a reactive person. Again, if I'm not relying on circumstances, I'm not relying on people. So therefore, my expectation is not built on that. So therefore, I'm protected against disappointment. I'm protected against frustration. I'm protected against anger because the fact that, if it works out the way I planned, if you plan a day and you do the thing and this works out and the travel time is correct and there's no traffic and everyone's healthy and you have awesome, great. But boy, what happens when, again, there is traffic or someone does get sick or, boy, that person just doesn't seem to be reacting the way that I thought. I thought this interview was going to go really well. The first one went so well. What happened in the second one? We're steadfast in terms of our reaction to those things, that we're not changed because circumstances change. We're not changed because of people changing. And that's what comes, again, from a person that's secured in God, that is trusting in God, who knows God, who is in relationship with God. So maybe, we are just going to cover verse 7 today, because it's just so much to say in terms of all that God makes possible in us. Again, no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. I just love Psalm 37. Let me turn there. I was also thinking of a passage in Proverbs, but maybe this is what I would reflect on it in an additional passage. Because so oftentimes, the thing that might unsteady us, the thing that might create a fear of bad news or cause us not to be steadfast is the presence of evil in the world. We always question, why is there so much evil? Why does God allow that evil? But what Psalm 37 says is just tremendous. It says, "Do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither. Like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your hearts. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil." And so what a powerful scripture in support of what the writer is saying here in Psalm 112 in terms of he will have no fear of bad news. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord, that even as evil seem to be winning the day, just to realize that God would direct us to say, don't be afraid of that. Eventually that stuff is going to go away. That's not going to lead to anything ultimately. And yet you trust in the Lord. You do good. Commit your way to the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. That doesn't mean he's going to give you what you want. He's going to give you what you should want. That's what that verse means. But then he's going to make the justice of our cause shine like the noonday sun. And that's part of the promise that we have in terms of living our lives. And again, not that bad news won't happen, but we don't fear it because we know that God can turn things around. We know that as much as he can provide for things in it, he can also resolve it in a way that will bring both glory to him and benefit to us. And because we know that the ultimate end of all life, the best thing we could ever be occupied with, is his glory, that is where, again, anything can happen. Anything can happen in circumstance. Anything can happen with people. And there's still an opportunity to glorify God. So therefore, there's still an opportunity to do the most important thing I could ever do. Because that's not about your comfort. That's not about your happiness. It's not about, you feel good and you like what's happening. That's not the end of life. That's what the world thinks the end of life is. But then that is enslavement. Now all of a sudden I have to be afraid of all those things that could take that away. But when I'm focused on, no, it's about your glory, God. It's about the opportunity to reflect faith, to reflect righteousness, to reflect love, loving people that don't love me, loving enemies. Again, that's the thing that's glorifying to God. And when we're pressed into that, that's where this Psalm 112 starts happening. We're not shaken. We're steadfast. Don't be afraid of bad news. And what a great life that becomes. Not because things are going well, but because we're connected to a God who is in control, that he does know, and he is powerful in all the time, in every circumstance. It's just us freeing him to act in the way that he sees fit. Amen. Well, God bless you in your day today.